Morning dew clung to the hem of Elara's threadbare dress as she made her way through the village square. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the cobblestone path. Market day would soon bring the usual bustle, but for now the stillness was broken only by the soft clink of chains. There, bound to the punishment post, knelt a stranger, head bowed, wrists shackled, his once fine clothing now tattered and soiled. The village magistrate had ordered him held until the travelling judge arrived, 3 days hence. Without family or coin, the man would likely die from exposure before justice could be served. Elara clutched the single silver coin hidden in her palm, her entire savings meant for winter grain. When the guard turned away, she approached. What would become of her if she surrendered her last hope for survival to free a man she'd never met? Would fate reward such mercy, or would hunger claim her before the first frost? The small cottage sat at the forest's edge, its thatched roof sagging slightly on the eastern corner. Morning light filtered through the lone window, illuminating the herb bundles hanging from every rafter. Elara moved with practiced efficiency, selecting dried comfrey and yarrow from her prized wooden herb box. The last gift from Mistress Wren before the old healer passed 3 winters ago. A proper healer keeps her remedies organized. Mistress Wren had said when presenting the carved box with its dozen compartments. The difference between cure and poison often lies in finding the right herb quickly. Elara's fingers traced the worn edges of the box as she measured ingredients for Widow Thorn's rheumatism salve. The widow could offer only eggs in exchange, but with the coin gone, even eggs would be welcome. Elara sighed, pushing away thoughts of her empty larder. Outside, a blackbird called, announcing the day properly begun. Elara wrapped the finished salve in a scrap of linen and secured her shawl around her shoulders. The village would be stirring now, the memory of the shackled stranger likely already fading from most minds. Only her suddenly precarious future remained as evidence of the dawn encounter. The path to the village wound past fields where men stooped over the season's last harvest. They acknowledged her with cautious nods, respect for her healing skills, tempered by the old suspicion that followed women who lived alone at the forest's edge. Elara had grown accustomed to the contradiction summoned urgently when illness struck, yet kept at arm's length once health returned. Healer. A weathered hand waved from between rows of turnips. Farmer Gill straightened his bent back with visible effort. My Agnes sends word. Her time is near. Perhaps tomorrow, she thinks. Elara nodded. I'll prepare the birthing herbs. Send your boy if her waters break. Continuing toward the cluster of stone and timber dwellings, Elara mentally catalogued what she would need for a birth. Agnes had delivered 5 healthy children already. This 6th would likely come easily. Still, winter births were always risky. The village square appeared transformed from dawn's emptiness. The punishment post stood vacant now, no evidence remaining of its recent occupant, except churned mud and her missing coin. Women clustered around the well, children darted between market stalls, and the smithy's hammer rang steadily. Is it true? Marjorie appeared at Elara's elbow, the baker's wife never one to waste time on pleasantries. You spent your last silver on that prisoner. News traveled swiftly in a place this small. I did what seemed right, Elara replied simply. Right foolish, some might say. Marjorie's voice lowered. Winter comes early this year. The signs are all there. Then I shall be grateful for my friends, Elara said pointedly, though both women recognized the statement's hollowness. Friendship extended only so far when food grew scarce. Widow Thorn's cottage sat closest to the square. The old woman accepted the salve with gnarled hands. Bless you, child, these old bones feel the cold coming. She hesitated, eyes sharp in her wrinkled face. I heard about your mercy this morning. Not many would part with their last coin, especially not for a stranger. It was nothing, Elara murmured. Nothing is nothing, child. Actions carry weight. The widow disappeared inside, returning with 6 brown eggs. These were meant for the tax collector, but he can wait. Elara tried to refuse, but the widow pressed them firmly into her hands. Your kindness inspired mine. That's how the world should work. Walking home, Elara cradled the precious eggs. 6 eggs meant 6 days of a small meal. 6 days to determine how she would survive the winter. The forest offered mushrooms and late berries, but foraging alone would not sustain her through the months ahead. As twilight descended, Elara stoked her small fire and prepared a single egg with care, saving the others. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the first true bite of winter. She wrapped her threadbare blanket tighter, wondering if the stranger she'd freed had found warm shelter or if he too faced the night with uncertainty. We do what we can, Elara whispered to herself, echoing Mistress Wren's favorite saying, and hope that tomorrow brings better. She could not have imagined how prophetic those words would prove. Dawn had barely broken when Elara woke from troubled dreams of empty grain stores and bitter winds. A light frost glittered on her windowsill, unusually early, confirming Marjorie's warning of a harsh winter ahead. She dressed quickly, adding an extra layer beneath her worn dress. The village square was nearly deserted as Elara approached. Only the guard slouched against the stone wall, visibly bored with his assignment to watch the prisoner. The stranger knelt where she had seen him yesterday, his head bowed. Overnight his condition had deteriorated. Dried blood crusted at his temple, and his breathing came invisible, labored puffs in the cold morning air. Elara hesitated at the square's edge. The silver coin pressed against her palm inside her pocket, her entire savings from months of trading remedies and attending births. That single coin meant survival, grain for bread, tallow for candles, wool to patch her blankets. Without it, winter loomed as an almost insurmountable challenge. Yet she could not tear her gaze from the stranger. Unlike the usual prisoners, drunks or petty thieves from the village, this man was unknown to her. His clothing, though soiled and torn, suggested quality fabric. Most striking were his hands, strong but uncoal-used, without the permanent dirt ingrained in every farmer's skin. He'll not last till the judge arrives, the guard commented, noticing her stare. 3 days out in this cold, no food, waste of my time watching a dead man. What was his crime? Elara asked, stepping closer. The guard shrugged. Found him near Lord Aldrich's hunting grounds. No identification, wouldn't speak his name or business. Suspicious enough these days with the border disputes. Elara studied the prisoner. Something in his posture spoke not of guilt but of dignity. As if sensing her scrutiny, the man raised his head. The impact of his gaze struck Elara like physical force. Eyes of startling blue intelligence assessed her from a face that, despite its current grime and stubble, showed strong, noble features. No pleading or desperation marred his expression, only calm evaluation that somehow made her feel as though she were the one being judged. "Water," the stranger said, his voice rough from thirst, but carrying unexpected refinement. "If you would be so kind." The guard snorted. "Should have thought of thirst before trespassing on noble lands." Elara returned to the well, drawing a ladle of fresh water. The guard made no move to stop her. As she approached the prisoner, as she held the ladle to his cracked lips, his fingers briefly brushed hers, warm despite the cold shackles binding his wrists. "My thanks," he murmured after drinking. Something in his tone carried more weight than simple gratitude for water. "The magistrate sentenced him to hold until the circuit judge," the guard explained, "unless someone pays his bond. 5 silver pieces would see him free, but who'd pay that for a nameless man? 5 silver, an impossible sum for most villagers. Even for Elara, her single coin represented months of careful saving. And if he dies before the judge arrives?" Elara asked. The guard shrugged again. "One less mouth in the king's prisons. Makes no difference to me." The stranger's eyes never left Elara's face. No pleading, no demands, yet something in his steady gaze seemed to see through her, as if he already knew what choice she would make. Elara closed her fingers around her coin. This was madness. The sensible choice was clear. Walk away, preserve her means of survival. The man was nothing to her, not family, not friend, not even a fellow villager, yet her feet remained rooted. Mistress Wren's voice echoed in memory. Mercy, given freely, returns threefold. An old woman's superstition, perhaps, but the iron shackles had already left raw, red wounds on the stranger's wrists. By nightfall, frost would claim his fingers, by morning perhaps his life. What would 1 silver buy him? The question slipped from Elara's lips before she could reconsider. 1 day's shelter at the tavern, the guard calculated. Not freedom, but might keep him alive till the judge arrives. The stranger's gaze intensified, though he remained silent. In that moment, some wordless understanding passed between them, that Elara could neither explain nor deny. Her fingers uncurled. The coin caught morning light as she extended her hand to the guard. 1 day then, she said quietly. 1 day of shelter. The stranger bowed his head, but not before Elara glimpsed something unexpected flash across his features. Not simply relief, but something that looked remarkably like triumph. Elara's cottage felt colder upon her return, though the temperature hadn't changed. She opened her larder, a small cupboard built into the north wall, and surveyed its meager contents: half a loaf of barley bread, 3 withered apples, a small pouch of dried beans, and 5 precious eggs from Widow Thorn. Without the coin for grain, these supplies would barely last 2 weeks. You've survived worse, she reminded herself, closing the cupboard door with a firm click. Outside, clouds gathered low on the horizon. Elara grabbed her foraging basket and headed toward the forest. The woods had always provided when times grew lean. Mushrooms, late berries, nuts, and edible roots could supplement her stores if she knew where to look. The forest embraced her with familiar scents of loam and pine. Elara followed game trails, eyes scanning the undergrowth. After an hour, her basket held a modest collection: a handful of hazelnuts, some wrinkled blackberries past their prime, 3 types of mushrooms, and a cluster of wild onions. Not enough, but a start. A rustle in the underbrush startled her. She froze, watching as a hare darted across the path. If only she had snares like the village hunters, meat would vastly improve her chances through winter. Another skill she would need to learn, though the thought of taking life even for sustenance sat uneasily with her healer's heart. By mid-afternoon, Elara returned to the village, intending to check on Agnes before heading home. As she approached the well, conversations hushed. Eyes followed her, some curious, others judgmental. Is it true you gave your last coin to free that prisoner? Young Thomas, the blacksmith's son, approached without the adult's restraint. I helped someone in need. Elara replied carefully. My father says you'll starve come winter. The boy's bluntness carried no malice, just matter-of-fact repetition. Before Elara could respond, Marjorie appeared, pulling Thomas away with a sharp word. Don't mind the boy, she said, though her expression suggested she shared the sentiment. But people are talking, Elara. That stranger, no one even saw where he went after you paid his bond. The tavern, I assume. That's what the coin purchased. Shelter there. Marjorie shook her head. Tavern keeper says no stranger sought lodging today. A chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air settled in Elara's stomach. Had the guard simply pocketed her coin, or had the stranger taken the opportunity for temporary freedom and fled? What's done is done, Elara said, more to herself than Marjorie. Indeed, Marjorie's tone softened slightly. Agnes is asking for you, says the babe is restless today. Grateful for the change in subject, Elara made her way to Farmer Gill's modest home. Agnes lay on her bed, hands cradling her swollen belly. There you are, Agnes smiled weakly. This one kicks like he's fighting an army. Elara examined her carefully. Still some days away, I think. The position feels good. She mixed a mild tea for Agnes's comfort, thoughts straying to her dwindling supplies. Traditionally, the family would provide the midwife with food and coin after a successful birth, but that was days away, if it came at all. "I heard about your kindness this morning," Agnes said as she sipped the tea. "Gil thinks it foolish, but I told him sometimes the heart knows what the mind cannot see." Elara managed a smile. "Let's hope my heart is wiser than it feels at present." Darkness was falling as Elara finally returned to her cottage. The temperature dropped sharply with the sun, and the first snowflakes began to drift from the leaden sky, weeks earlier than usual. Inside, she lit a small fire with carefully measured kindling wood. Two would need strict rationing now. She prepared a thin soup with 1 egg and some foraged greens. As she ate, wind rattled her shutters, driving snow into growing drifts outside. The weather confirmed her worst fears. Winter had arrived early and with unmerciful intensity. In the faint firelight, Elara unfolded her single blanket, thin in places from years of use. She would need to sleep in her clothes for extra warmth. As she settled onto her straw mattress, she wondered about the blue-eyed stranger. Had her sacrifice made any difference, or was he too facing this bitter night, without shelter? "No regrets," she whispered into the darkness. "What's given freely is never truly lost." The words sounded hollow against the howling wind, yet she clung to them as she drifted into uneasy sleep, unaware that come morning everything would change. A sharp rapping at the door pulled Elara from deep sleep. Dawn light filtered through the thin curtain covering her window, revealing a fresh layer of snow outside. The knocking came again, more insistent. Wrapping her blanket around her shoulders, Elara approached cautiously. Visitors this early rarely brought good news. Perhaps Agnes's time had come earlier than expected. She pulled the door open and froze. Before her stood not a village messenger, but a sight so unexpected she wondered if she still dreamed. The stranger from the punishment post stood on her threshold, but transformed, gone were the tattered clothes and grime. Instead, he wore a fine woolen cloak, trimmed with fur over a richly embroidered tunic. A sword with a jeweled pommel hung at his side. Most startling was his face, clean-shaven now, revealing strong features and those same piercing blue eyes that had assessed her so carefully in the village square. Behind him, 2 mounted guards in polished armor waited on the path, banners bearing an unfamiliar crest fluttering from their lances. "Good morning, healer Elara." His voice, no longer parched, carried the unmistakable cultured tones of nobility. "I hope the hour isn't too early for a proper introduction." Elara clutched her blanket tighter, acutely aware of her rumpled appearance. "You know my name." A slight smile touched his lips. "I made inquiries after your kindness yesterday. I am Lord Aldrich of Thornwall Keep." The name struck Elara like physical force. Lord Aldrich, ruler of these lands, a man whose name was spoken with reverent fear in the village. The same Lord Aldrich whose hunting grounds the stranger had allegedly trespassed upon. "There seems to be some confusion," she managed. "No confusion." He extended his hand, palm up. Resting there was a signet ring bearing the same crest as the banners. "May I enter? The morning grows no warmer, and what I have to say deserves privacy." Numb with shock, Elara stepped aside. Lord Aldrich ducked the low doorway, his presence immediately filling the humble space. He surveyed the cottage with interest rather than the disdain she might have expected. "Your reputation as a healer is well established in these parts," he said, gesturing toward her hanging herbs. "Your reputation for mercy, however, exceeded even that." Finding her voice, Elara asked, "Why were you shackled in my village?" "Surely the guard would have recognized his own lord." "Because I wished it so." Lord Aldrich removed his glove. "For the past month, I have traveled my lands in disguise, allowing myself to be imprisoned in each village under various pretexts. To what purpose? To test the character of my subjects." His direct gaze held hers. "In 7 villages I was left to the elements. In 2, I was mocked and tormented by guards and villagers alike. In this village, your village, I found what I sought. Understanding dawned. You were testing us. I was testing humanity." He moved closer, his height forcing him to stoop beneath the low rafters. My father ruled through fear. When I inherited his lands, I swore to rule differently. But to do so, I needed to find someone who embodied the qualities I seek to foster. From inside his cloak, he withdrew a small pouch that clinked with coins. Your silver piece is here, returned tenfold, but that is merely the beginning of what I offer. Elara stared at the pouch but made no move to take it. What exactly are you offering, my lord? Lord Aldrich reached for her hand. His fingers were warm as they enclosed hers, and she noticed a fresh scar encircling his wrist where the shackles had cut into his skin. Marriage, healer, Elara. The words hung in the air between them, impossible yet unmistakable. You alone, out of 9 villages, showed compassion to a stranger at great personal cost. You alone gave your last coin with no expectation of return. Such a woman should not live in poverty at the forest's edge, but should help rule these lands as my wife and countess. Elara's knees weakened. She sank onto her single stool, the nobleman's words echoing in her ears. This is madness, she whispered. You know nothing of me beyond a single act. Sometimes a single act reveals everything worth knowing about a person. He knelt before her, a position so incongruous, a lord kneeling to a peasant, that Elara half believed she would wake at any moment. I make this offer in full awareness of what I do, Lord Aldrich continued. Consider it carefully. My men will remain, and my carriage will arrive by midday should you accept. He rose and moved toward the door before turning back. Choose, healer, Elara. Unlike the choice you made yesterday, this one comes with no sacrifice, only possibility. The door closed behind him, leaving Elara alone with a pouch of silver and an offer that would change everything. The pouch of silver sat untouched on Elara's table as she paced the confines of her small cottage. Outside, villagers gathered at a respectful distance, stealing glances at the mounted guards with their lordly insignia. Word of Lord Aldrich's visit had spread faster than wildfire. A sharp knock announced Marjorie's arrival. The baker's wife entered without waiting for invitation, her eyes immediately finding the silver pouch. So it's true, she breathed. The stranger was Lord Aldrich himself. The whole village buzzes with it. Her gaze swept over Elara with new assessment. They say he's offered for you. How could they possibly know that? Elara asked, though she already suspected the answer. In small villages, even stone walls had ears. His men speak freely enough. Marjorie moved closer, voice dropping. Is it true? Has he offered marriage? Elara sank onto her stool. It appears so. Appears? Girl, there's no appears about a lord's offer. This is providence itself. Marjorie clutched Elara's hands. You must accept. Such chances come once in many lifetimes, if ever. I hardly know him, Elara protested. Know him? Marjorie laughed. What need to know him? He's Lord Aldrich, master of Thornwall Keep, ruler of 7 counties. They say his kitchens alone are larger than our entire square. A second knock interrupted Marjorie's enthusiastic counting of the lord's rumored wealth. This time, it was the village magistrate himself, a portly man who rarely deigned to visit the forest cottage. Healer Elara, he bowed with newfound respect. The village council wishes to convey our congratulations on your good fortune. Nothing is decided, Elara said firmly. The magistrate cleared his throat. Of course. But should you accept his lordship's generous offer, we hope you might remember your humble origins. The village has certain needs that have long gone unaddressed by the previous lord. You seek a petition to Lord Aldrich, Elara stated flatly. Merely suggesting that your new influence could benefit many, he replied smoothly. The bridge needs repair before spring floods, and the tax burden has grown increasingly. I will consider it. Elara cut him off. Should there be anything to consider? After the magistrate's departure, more villagers arrived with thinly disguised curiosity and hastily conceived petitions. By mid-morning, Elara retreated to the forest path behind her cottage, seeking solitude. There, unexpectedly, she found one of Lord Aldrich's guards waiting. "My lady," he bowed, the title sounding foreign applied to her. "Lord Aldrich sends this, with hopes it might address any hesitations." He extended a rolled parchment sealed with wax, bearing the same crest as the banners. Alone again, Elara broke the seal. The document was a marriage contract, written in flowing script and legal terminology that challenged her limited reading skill. Yet certain phrases stood out clearly: full rights and title of countess, equal claim to all properties and holdings, protection and provision for any family or connections of the bride. Such generosity seemed suspicious. Lords did not elevate peasant women to countesses without motive. Lords did not travel disguised among their people, testing their character through elaborate deceptions. Elara rolled the contract carefully and returned to her cottage. There she found Widow Thorn waiting, having shooed away the other visitor. "You've caused quite the commotion," the old woman observed, not intentionally. Elara set the contract on her table beside the untouched silver. Intentions matter little in the face of results. Widow Thorn's shrewd eyes took in the parchment. "So it's true then, the Lord wants you for his bride." "So he claims." "You doubt his sincerity?" Elara sighed. "I doubt his reason." "Why me?" "A single act of kindness seems flimsy foundation for marriage." "Perhaps." The widow's gnarled fingers traced patterns on the table. "Or perhaps such an act revealed exactly what he sought." Men of power rarely encounter genuine kindness without ulterior motive. "And what of my ulterior motives? Should I accept for the village's sake, for security against winter, for the status others seem so impressed by?" "Those aren't the questions troubling you," Widow Thorn observed. "You're wondering if you could ever be more than a curiosity to him, the peasant girl who showed unexpected mercy." Elara nodded, the widow's perception cutting to the heart of her doubts. "I know nothing of lords and ladies, of is and counties. I am a healer, nothing more. And perhaps that is precisely what his lordship requires, healing." Widow Thorn rose with effort. "The carriage approaches. Whatever you decide, remember that doors once closed rarely reopen." Through the window, Elara saw an ornate carriage cresting the path to her cottage, pulled by 4 matching white horses. The moment of decision had arrived, ready or not. "How does one even begin to be a countess?" she whispered. "The same way one begins anything," Widow Thorn replied. "One step at a time." The carriage waited at the edge of the clearing, its gilded trim catching the midday sun. 4 white horses stamped impatiently, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. A liveried driver sat motionless on the high seat, eyes fixed forward, as if the humble cottage before him was beneath notice. Inside, Elara moved with deliberate slowness, touching each familiar object as if to commit it to memory. Her fingers lingered on the wooden herb box, the smooth stone mortar worn from years of grinding remedies, the small knife used to harvest plants. Were she to accept Lord Aldrich's offer, what would become of her healing practice? Would the villagers seek her skills at the keep, or would distance and her new status sever those connections? And what of her responsibility to Agnes, whose time drew near? The marriage contract lay unfurled on her table. Elara had read it 3 times, struggling with some of the formal language, but understanding its essence. Lord Aldrich offered protection, position, comfort, far more than she could have imagined yesterday. Yet nowhere in the flowing script did the word love appear. "Did you expect it would?" she asked herself softly. Marriage among commoners was practical arrangement enough. Among nobility, it was political strategy. That Lord Aldrich based his choice on a test of character rather than bloodline or dowry was unusual enough. Elara glanced around her cottage once more. This single room had been her entire world since Mistress Wren's passing. Its limitations were many. The roof leaked in heavy rain, the walls let in drafts, the floor remained perpetually dusty, yet it was hers, earned through her own skills and effort. At Thornwall Keep, nothing would be truly hers. She would walk in borrowed finery, sleep in chambers she hadn't built, eat food she hadn't grown or traded for. A kind of comfortable imprisonment, perhaps. The sound of voices outside broke her reverie. She peered through the window to see Widow Thorne speaking with one of Lord Aldrich's guards. The old woman gestured emphatically, then turned toward the cottage. Elara opened the door before she could knock. "The captain grows impatient," Widow Thorne said, without preamble. "Says his lord expects an answer by noon. I have until noon to decide the course of my entire life." Elara's voice rose. "Such is the way of lords," the widow replied pragmatically. "They're unaccustomed to waiting." Elara gathered her patched shawl closer. "What would you do in my place?" "I am not in your place." The widow's eyes softened. "But I was young once. Had such an opportunity come to me." She paused. "The question isn't whether you should go, child. The question is what you might regret more, going or stay." Elara considered this as she looked toward her herb garden, now dusted with early snow. If she stayed, life would continue as before. The endless struggle against winter, the villagers' mixture of need and suspicion, the solitary nights. She knew these challenges intimately, could anticipate each hardship before it arrived. If she went with Lord Aldrich, she faced unknown challenges, court politics, noble expectations, the scrutiny of those born to privilege. All would be foreign territory. Yet weren't unknown opportunities preferable to familiar limitations? "I need to pack," Elara said suddenly. Widow Thorne nodded. "I thought you might." Together, they gathered Elara's few possessions. Her clothes filled barely half of a small bundle, her most precious belongings, the herb box, her healing knife, Mistress Wren's recipe book, took up the remainder. As she tied the bundle, her fingers brushed something smooth at the bottom of her trunk. The carved wooden horse emerged from beneath a folded shawl. Tiny and imperfect, it had been a gift from Taven, a village boy she'd nursed through a burning fever 2 summers past. "To protect you," he'd whispered weakly, as he pressed it into her palm. She tucked the wooden horse into her pocket. Whatever awaited at Thornwall Keep, she would need all the protection she could muster. "You could still refuse," Widow Thorne said, watching her carefully. "I could," Elara straightened, "but then I'd never know what might have been." The widow nodded, satisfied. "I'll tell Agnes you've been called away. Some things can't be helped. Tell her I'm sorry. I would have attended her birth if I could." Outside, the carriage door opened as they approached. A footman in livery bowed low. "Lady Elara," he intoned with practiced formality. "Lord Aldrich awaits your arrival at Thornwall Keep." Elara turned for a final look at her cottage, memorizing its humble silhouette against the forest backdrop. Then, clutching her small bundle, she accepted the footman's hand and stepped into the waiting carriage. The wooden horse pressed against her hip as the door closed, sealing her choice. For better or worse, she had traded the familiar for the unknown. Only time would reveal whether Mercy's reward would prove blessing or curse. The carriage interior surprised Elara with its opulence. Velvet cushions in deep crimson lined the seats, and intricate woodwork adorned every surface. She perched stiffly, afraid to fully settle her weight against such finery. Opposite her sat Lord Aldrich himself, watching her with that same penetrating gaze from the village square. "You came," he said simply, as the carriage lurched into motion. "I did." Elara clutched her bundle tighter. "Second thoughts already." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "First thoughts still forming," she countered, finding unexpected boldness. "Yesterday I was a village healer with a single silver coin. Today I ride in a lord's carriage toward marriage. Forgive me if my thoughts require time to align with reality." Rather than taking offense, Lord Aldrich laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Well spoken. Most in your position would either tremble in silence or attempt flattery." The village receded behind them. As the carriage took the northern road, Elara glimpsed familiar fields and cottages through the window. Now strangely distant, as if she viewed them from years rather than yards away. Thornwall Keep is a half-day's journey. Lord Aldrich explained. We'll arrive by dusk. He studied her face. Have you travelled beyond the village before? Elara shook her head. Mistress Wren, my teacher, took me to the spring fair at Dunfield once, but that was 3 hours' walk at most. Then there are many firsts ahead for you. He gestured toward the passing landscape. These lands have been in my family for 9 generations. My father ruled them with an iron hand, collecting every tax, punishing every infraction. The people feared him. When he died, I inherited not just his lands but the consequences of his harshness. Is that why you tested the villages, to see if his legacy could be undone? Precisely. Lord Aldrich leaned forward. A realm built on fear remains strong, only while that fear holds. I seek something more enduring. The carriage passed from familiar territory into landscapes Elara had never seen. Rolling hills gave way to denser forests, then opened to a wide valley where a river snaked through farmlands. Villages larger than her own appeared and disappeared from view. People stopped their work to bow as the Lord's carriage passed. They bow from habit, not affection, Lord Aldrich observed. That is what I hope to change. Hours passed in conversation punctuated by comfortable silence. Lord Aldrich spoke of his vision for his lands, of changes already begun, reduced taxes, improved roads, a new system for settling disputes. Elara listened, offering occasional questions that seemed to please him with their directness. As afternoon waned, they crested a hill, and Elara gasped. Below them spread a vast lake, its surface gleaming gold in the setting sun. At its edge rose Thornwall Keep, not the grim fortress she had imagined, but a sprawling complex of stone buildings with soaring towers and walls that seemed to grow naturally from the rocky promontory beneath. Your home, Lord Aldrich said softly. It's beautiful. Elara whispered, all momentarily overpowering apprehension. The road wound down toward the lake, curving through orchards and gardens now dormant for winter. Guards stood at attention as the carriage approached, massive gates thrown wide in welcome. Inside, a courtyard larger than her entire village square bustled with activity. Servants, soldiers, craftspeople, all paused as the carriage arrived. When the door opened, Lord Aldrich exited first, then extended his hand to Elara. The significance wasn't lost on her, her first appearance before those who would become her subjects. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers in his. A hush fell over the courtyard as she emerged. Elara felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, assessing her simple dress, her worn boots, her small bundle of possessions. She fought the urge to shrink back into the carriage. My people, Lord Aldrich's voice carried across the courtyard, I present to you Lady Elara, who will soon become your countess. The silence held for one heartbeat, then two, before a single voice called out, welcome, my lady. Others joined, the chorus of welcome growing until it echoed from the stone wall. Elara's fingers found the wooden horse in her pocket, clutching it like an anchor as she smiled tentatively at the sea of unfamiliar faces. The journey from her cottage had taken mere hours, but the distance felt immeasurable. A tall woman in dark blue robes approached, bowing formally. I am Mistress Livia, head of household. If you'll follow me, my lady, we've prepared chambers for you. As Elara moved to follow, Lord Aldrich leaned close. Rest well. Tomorrow begins your new life in earnest. His breath warmed her ear as he added, and I believe you'll rise to it magnificently. The wooden horse remained clutched in her palm as she climbed the keep's grand staircase, each step taking her further from everything she had known. Elara's chambers encompassed more space than the entire village square. Mistress Livia led her through an antechamber, with comfortable seating around a hearth, past a bathing room with actual plumbed water, and into a bedchamber dominated by a massive 4-poster bed. Tapestries depicting forest scenes adorned stone walls, and thick rugs covered the floor. These rooms haven't been used since the late Countess passed, Mistress Livia explained, her tone carefully neutral. Lord Aldrich requested they be prepared specifically for you. Elara placed her small bundle on a chair that looked worth more than everything she'd ever owned. The late Countess, Lord Aldrich's mother. Yes, my lady. She died when his lordship was but 12. Mistress Livia gestured toward a large wardrobe. We've provided some garments that should suffice until proper measurements can be taken. The seamstresses will attend you tomorrow. After the household mistress departed, Elara explored her new domain with tentative steps. The wardrobe revealed gowns in rich fabrics, velvet, silk, fine wool, all slightly outdated in style but of undeniable quality. She ran her fingers over a blue velvet sleeve, marveling at its softness. A discreet knock preceded the arrival of two young women, who introduced themselves as her assigned maids. They prepared a bath scented with lavender and helped Elara wash away the journey's dust, their expressions carefully masking any reaction to her careless hands and humble undergarments. "Would my lady care to see the architectural plans of the keep?" asked the elder maid, Bess, as they helped Elara don a simpler evening gown of deep green wool. Lord Aldrich thought they might help you learn your way around. The plans, spread across a writing desk, revealed Thornwall Keep's true complexity. What had appeared a single structure from the approach was actually a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings added by successive generations. The original fortress formed the northwestern corner, with the great hall, kitchens and family quarters expanding southward and eastward over centuries. "It's enormous," Elara murmured, tracing the parchment with a fingertip. "You'll learn your way quickly enough, my lady," Bess assured her. "Most daily activities happen in the central portions. The east wing houses guests, and the old fortress is mainly storage now, except for the armory." Another knock interrupted them. A steward announced that Lord Aldrich requested Elara's company for dinner in his private dining chamber, rather than the great hall, to allow my lady to adjust before formal presentation to court. The steward led Elara through corridors that wound far more confusingly than the straightforward plan suggested. They passed servants who bowed or curtsied, guards who stood at rigid attention, and occasional nobles who regarded her with undisguised curiosity. One such noble, an older man with a silver-streaked beard, stopped them with a raised hand. "So this is the village healer who captured our lord's fancy," he said, examining Elara as one might inspect a horse for purchase. "Interesting choice, Aldrich. Very unconventional." Elara realized with a start that Lord Aldrich had approached silently from behind her. "Lord Blackwell," Aldrich acknowledged coolly. "Casting judgment already. That seems premature, even for you." "Merely observing," Lord Blackwell replied. "The court will certainly find your bride to be a fascinating topic of conversation." "No doubt," Aldrich offered his arm to Elara. "Which is why we'll save formal introductions for tomorrow." "Good evening, Blackwell." In the private dining chamber, a table set for two awaited beside windows overlooking the now moonlit lake. Servants brought course after course, more food than Elara's entire village might consume in a day. She ate cautiously, mimicking Aldrich's movements with utensils she'd never encountered before. Lord Blackwell seemed displeased, she ventured when the servants temporarily withdrew. "Blackwell has been displeased since my father died and I began undoing his policies." Aldrich sipped his wine. "He represents the old guard, those who believe nobility means being separate from and superior to common people, as opposed to testing them in village squares." The words escaped before Elara could reconsider. To her relief, Aldrich laughed. "Fair point. My methods may be unusual, but my intentions are genuine." His expression grew serious. "Tomorrow will be challenging. The court will scrutinize your every word, gesture, and garment. Some, like Blackwell, have already decided against you, because I'm common-born, because you represent change, and change threatens their comfortable position." Aldrich leaned forward. "But you needn't face them alone. Mistress Livia will guide you in matters of protocol, and I'll be present for formal introductions." Elara twisted the napkin in her lap. "What if I embarrass you?" "You won't. His confidence seemed absolute. The woman who gave her last coin to free a stranger possesses something far more valuable than noble birth, character. Remember that when they look down their noses at you. Later, alone in her new chambers, Elara stood at the window, gazing at the unfamiliar view. The wooden horse sat on the sill before her, a small, crude token amid such grandeur, yet more comforting than all the luxuries surrounding her. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered to the night. The keep's vastness pressed around her, its ancient stones holding secrets and intrigues she could scarcely imagine. Tomorrow would begin her introduction to a world governed by rules she didn't know, populated by people who already judged her, lacking. Sleep eluded her long into the night. Morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Maids bustled in with fresh water and breakfast, followed by seamstresses carrying fabric samples, and finally Mistress Livia bearing a small leather-bound book. "Your lady's primer," she explained, placing it on Elara's lap, while the seamstresses took measurements. "Essential knowledge for your new position. Court protocol, noble lineages, proper forms of address." Her stern expression softened slightly. "Normally a noble woman learns these things from childhood. You must absorb them in days." Elara leafed through the densely written pages while servants continued their preparations. Hierarchies of address, rules for precedence at formal functions, appropriate topics of conversation, forbidden gestures. It seemed an endless catalogue of potential missteps. "Is all this truly necessary?" she asked. "Absolutely," Mistress Livia replied without hesitation. "At court, appearances and protocol are weapons as deadly as any sword. Those who wish to undermine you will seize upon every mistake." By mid-morning, Elara found herself dressed in a gown of deep blue velvet with silver embroidery, hastily altered from the late Countess's wardrobe. Her hair had been arranged in a style more elaborate than she'd ever worn, and a delicate silver circlet rested on her brow. "Remember," Mistress Livia instructed as they prepared to descend to the great hall, "speak little, observe much. Accept introductions with a nod. Not too deep, mind you. You're to be their countess, not their servant. And stay close to Lord Aldrich." The great hall dwarfed any structure Elara had ever entered. Massive stone columns supported a vaulted ceiling adorned with intricate wooden beams. Tapestries depicting battles and hunts covered the walls between tall windows. At the far end, a dais held the Lord's chair, not quite a throne, but clearly a seat of authority. Lord Aldrich awaited her at the hall's entrance, resplendent in formal attire that matched her gown. His approving smile bolstered her courage momentarily. "Ready?" he murmured, offering his arm. "As I'll ever be," she replied, placing her hand on his sleeve. Their entrance silenced the assembled court. Dozens of richly dressed nobles turned to stare as Lord Aldrich led Elara toward the dais. She forced herself to walk steadily, chin lifted, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "My honored guests," Aldrich's voice carried through the hall, "I present Lady Elara, who has accepted my proposal of marriage and will soon be your countess." The silence held a moment longer before polite applause began. Elara noted how some nobles clapped enthusiastically, while others barely touched their palms together, faces carefully neutral or openly disapproving. What followed was a blur of introductions. Names and titles washed over Elara as nobles approached to pay respects. She struggled to match faces to the lineages hastily studied in the primer, aware of calculating gazes, assessing her every response. Lady Elara peered a woman in crimson silk, her smile not reaching her eyes. "What a surprising choice our lord has made. I'm Lady Beatrice of Highcrest. My father and Lord Aldrich have been discussing an alliance between our houses for some time." The implication hung clear in the air. This woman had expected to stand where Elara now stood. "Lady Beatrice," Elara acknowledged with the precise nod Mistress Livia had taught her. "Lord Aldrich speaks highly of Highcrest's orchards." Beatrice's smile tightened. "Indeed, our families have deep roots together. Unlike newer associations," She drifted away before Elara could respond. Throughout the morning, similar encounters repeated with varying degrees of subtlety. Some nobles asked pointed questions about Elara's background, while others spoke over her to address Aldrich directly, as if she were invisible or incapable of comprehension. During a brief respite when Aldrich was drawn into conversation with military advisors, Elara overheard two noble women speaking behind raised fans. A village healer? Really? It's beyond comprehension. They say she freed him from the village stocks without recognizing who he was. How charmingly rustic. I give it 6 months before he tires of the novelty. If the council even approves the match, Lord Blackwell is already gathering opposition. Elara retreated to a window in Brazier, stomach churning. The primer in her chambers hadn't prepared her for this. The casual cruelty masked by courtly manners, the political currents flowing beneath superficial pleasantries. Don't let them see your discomfort, came a quiet voice. A young woman with intelligent eyes had approached unnoticed. I'm Sophia, Lord Aldrich's cousin. May I offer some advice? Elara nodded gratefully. Half the court opposes you, because they opposed Aldrich's father and now oppose him by extension. A quarter opposes you because they had other matches in mind for Aldrich, like that viper Beatrice. The remainder are waiting to see which way the wind blows. Sophia squeezed Elara's hand briefly. Show strength now, or they'll never stop testing you. Before Elara could thank her, Lord Aldrich returned, reclaiming her attention for further introduction, but Sophia's words remained, a steady reminder as Elara faced the continued scrutiny of her new world. By day's end, one thing had become abundantly clear: the challenges of surviving winter in her village might have been simpler than navigating the treacherous waters of court politics. Yet something in Elara, the same determination that had kept her independent after Mistress Wren's death, refused to be cowed by disapproving stares and whispered insults. She would learn this new battlefield, just as she had learned which plants healed and which harmed. Survival merely required different tools. Days blurred into a whirlwind of lessons. Elara learned proper table etiquette, court dances, the genealogies of prominent families, and the complex web of alliances that bound the nobility together. Each night she collapsed into bed, mind swimming with new information, only to begin again at dawn. On the 5th day, seeking respite, Elara slipped away from her etiquette instructor and wandered the keep's grounds. The biting cold kept most indoors, giving her a rare moment of solitude. Her steps carried her to a walled garden, where dormant rosebushes stood like skeletal sentinels around a central fountain, now drained for winter. Beyond the ornamental garden, she discovered an unexpected sight: an overgrown herb garden, clearly long neglected. Dead stalks of what had once been medicinal plants poked through frost-hardened soil. Elara knelt, brushing away snow to examine the layout. Despite years of neglect, she recognized the thoughtful organization: culinary herbs to one side, medicinal to the other, and a separate section for plants requiring special care. "My mother's garden," came Lord Aldrich's voice behind her. "No one has tended it since her death." Elara rose quickly. "My lord, I didn't mean to intrude." "You aren't intruding. And when we're alone, please call me Aldrich." He joined her beside a withered lavender bush. "Mother was like you in some ways, interested in healing plants and remedies." The court physician disapproved, of course. Noble ladies weren't supposed to dirty their hands with such work. Yet she persisted, Elara observed, noting the garden's extensive layout, until her death. A shadow crossed his face, an illness the court physician couldn't cure. She tried treating herself with herbs from this garden, but by then it was too late. Elara sensed the old grief behind his words. "This garden could be restored," she said softly. "The root structures of perennials like lavender and rosemary often survive, dormant beneath the soil." "Could you do it?" Aldrich asked, his interest evident. "Yes, though it would take planning." Elara walked the garden's perimeter, mind already cataloguing possibilities. With proper attention, it could produce healing herbs for the entire keep by summer. That evening, rather than joining the court for dinner, Elara requested parchment and charcoal. By lamplight, she sketched a detailed garden design, mapping where each plant should grow based on its needs for sun, shade, and water. She incorporated what she'd observed of the original layout while adding improvements based on her own experience. A knock at her chamber door revealed an unexpected visitor, Master Hadrian, the keep's elderly physician. "Mistress Livia mentioned your interest in the old herb garden," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "I thought we might discuss the matter." Elara invited him to examine her plans, prepared for the dismissal Aldrich had suggested the court physician would give. To her surprise, Master Hadrian studied the designs with genuine interest. "You've placed the foxglove in partial shade-wise, it burns in full sun," he noted, "and grouped the fever-reduced together for easy harvest during illness outbreaks. You've done this before." "I was apprenticed to a village healer from childhood," Elara explained. "After her death, I continued her work. Self-taught, then. Fascinating." The physician pointed to her placement of certain plants. "I would suggest moving the belladonna farther from the culinary herbs. Accidental harvesting could prove deadly." For the next hour they discussed healing plants and treatments. Master Hadrian possessed formal medical training from the Royal Academy, while Elara contributed practical knowledge of herbal remedies passed through generations of village healers. "We approach healing from different paths," the physician concluded, "but our destination is the same. The late Countess would have enjoyed your company. I think." The next morning, Elara presented her completed garden design to Aldrich. The parchment detailed not only plant placement, but seasonal care instructions and harvesting schedules. "This is remarkable," he said, studying the careful drawings. "Can it be implemented before spring planting? With proper preparation, yes. The ground needs turning and enriching with compost. Seeds must be sourced, and some rarer plants might require cuttings from elsewhere. Consider it done." Aldrich rolled up the parchment carefully. "I'll assign gardeners to work under your direction." Word of the garden project spread quickly through the keep. By midday, Elara found herself in the physician's chambers, discussing which remedies were most needed for winter ailments. By evening, she had been summoned to attend a child with persistent cough, the son of a visiting lord who had exhausted the court physician's conventional treatments. The simple remedy of honey, thyme, and a pinch of ginger, commonplace in her village, brought the boy relief within hours. His grateful father spread word of her skill, and by the following day, several nobles had approached her discreetly about various ailments. "It seems you found your place more quickly than expected," Sophia commented, joining Elara as she inspected the garden site where workers had begun clearing debris. "Healing transcends class barriers, it seems." Elara watched the activity with quiet satisfaction. Here at least was something familiar, something she could contribute that even the haughtiest noble couldn't dismiss. "Everyone falls ill eventually," she replied. "Even lords and ladies, especially lords and ladies," Sophia laughed, "who believe themselves too important for common affliction." 2 weeks passed swiftly. Elara's days divided between etiquette lessons, garden preparations, and increasing requests for healing consultations. Though many nobles still regarded her with open skepticism, others had begun to acknowledge her with genuine respect, particularly those she had helped with ailments both minor and significant. The wedding date had been set for the first day of spring, allowing time for proper preparations and for nobles from neighboring regions to attend. Elara found herself swept into planning discussions that seemed unnecessarily elaborate, debates about flower arrangements and table settings that would have fed her village for a month. "Lady Beatrice insists she should be seated at the high table," Mistress Livia reported during one such session. "Her father is Lord Aldrich's most powerful vassal. Then we shall seat her there," Elara replied pragmatically. "I have no wish to create needless enemies." Mistress Livia's eyebrow rose slightly. "A wise approach, my lady, though I should mention Lady Beatrice has been a frequent visitor to Lord Aldrich's father's chambers when he was lord. Many expected an announcement of their betrothal before his unexpected choice of you." The implication was clear. Beatrice considered herself wronged. her expected position usurped by a common-born woman. That evening, Elara joined Aldrich and selected members of court for dinner in the small hall. The gathering included Lord Blackwell, Sophia, Master Hadrian, and several military commanders, and unexpectedly, Lady Beatrice, resplendent in a gown of emerald silk that complemented her auburn hair. Conversation flowed around current affairs, border disputes with neighboring Westmark, tax collection difficulties in outlying villages, repair needs for roads damaged by early winter storms. Elara listened attentively, speaking only when directly addressed, aware that many still watched for signs of ignorance or impropriety. When servants brought the wine, Elara noticed Lady Beatrice lean toward a serving boy, whispering something that made him glance nervously at Elara before approaching with a special goblet. "For Lady Elara," Beatrice announced, her smile dazzling. "A special vintage from Highcrest Vineyards to welcome our future Countess properly." The goblet presented to Elara was finer than the others, silver inlaid with small emeralds that matched Beatrice's gown. An obvious gesture of dominance disguised as generosity. Elara accepted it with a gracious nod, raising it slightly in acknowledgement. As she brought the goblet toward her lips, a strange bitter scent reached her, almost imperceptible beneath the wine's fruity aroma, but unmistakable to someone trained in identifying plants. Foxglove. Deadly in even small quantities, without changing her expression, Elara pretended to sip, letting only the faintest amount touch her closed lips. "Exquisite," she commented, placing the goblet down. "Highcrest is known for such fine vintages." Beatrice's smile faltered slightly at Elara's calm demeanor. Throughout dinner, Elara carefully avoided the goblet while maintaining conversation, aware of Beatrice's increasingly frustrated glance. When the meal concluded, Elara discreetly signaled Master Hadrian, slipping the goblet into his hands as others departed. "Examine this privately," she murmured. "I believe it contains foxglove extract." Later that night, the physician confirmed her suspicion. "Enough to cause severe illness, possibly death in a woman of your size," he reported gravely. "What will you do?" "For now, nothing," Elara decided after consideration. Making accusations without witnesses would only seem hysterical and vindictive. "Lady Beatrice attempted to poison you," Sophia insisted when informed. "You can't simply ignore that." "I'm not ignoring it, I'm choosing my battlefield carefully." Elara placed the goblet, now carefully sealed, into a locked cabinet. "This is merely the first move in what I suspect will be a longer game." The next day brought news that confirmed her growing concerns. Lord Blackwell had formally petitioned the King's Council to review Aldrich's choice of bride, citing concerns for regional stability and questions of appropriate succession. Though such petitions rarely succeeded, they could delay the marriage indefinitely while investigations proceeded. Aldrich was furious when the petition arrived. "Blackwell oversteps," he raged, pacing Elara's chambers. "He has no authority to question my choice." "Yet he does so regardless," Elara observed calmly. "Why, what does he gain if our marriage fails?" "Control," Aldrich replied grimly. "With my father's passing, certain factions hoped I would be more easily influenced than he was. My independent actions, including choosing you, threatened their plans. Then Lady Beatrice is merely their most visible piece." The poisoned goblet was clumsy, suggesting desperation. He took Elara's hands in his. "I never anticipated placing you in such danger. Perhaps I was naive to think they would accept change without resistance." Elara thought of the deadly goblet now hidden in her cabinet. "They underestimate me if they think poison is enough to drive me away." Her village upbringing had taught her to recognize threats, whether from harsh winters or dangerous plants. Court politics operated by different rules, but with the same fundamental principle: survival required vigilance. "We face more than just disappointed suitors," Aldrich warned. Blackwell's petition suggests coordination among multiple houses. "The opposition is organizing." That night, Elara added the poisoned goblet to a growing collection of items she kept hidden from view. Each represented a different aspect of her new life: the wooden horse from her village past, the garden designed for her future plans, and now this deadly cup symbolizing the dangers she faced. Opposition was rising indeed, but so was her determination to meet it. The following weeks brought a shift in the keep's atmosphere. Lord Blackwell's petition had emboldened the opposition, and whispers dogged Elara's steps. Servants were polite but increasingly distant, as if fearing association with her might prove dangerous to their position. Aldrich spent long hours in council meetings, attempting to counter Blackwell's political maneuverings. The wedding preparations continued, but with a new undercurrent of uncertainty. Invitations to neighboring lords remained unsent, while the petition stood. One evening, Elara found herself alone in the small library adjoining her chambers. Snow fell heavily outside, reminding her of the village she'd left behind. Would Agnes have delivered her baby safely? Had Widow Thorne survived the bitter cold? Such thoughts came more frequently, as the initial excitement of her new life gave way to complicated reality. A soft knock interrupted her melancholy. Captain Thorne, leader of Aldrich's personal guard, entered with uncharacteristic hesitation. "My laddie," he bowed stiffly. "Lord Aldrich asked me to inform you that he cannot join you for dinner. An urgent message from the western villages requires his attention." "Thank you, Captain." Elara had grown accustomed to such cancellations. "Is there trouble?" The captain hesitated. "Nothing that should concern you, my laddie." Something in his tone raised her suspicion. "Captain Thorne, we both know Lord Aldrich values my counsel. What news came from the west?" After visible internal debate, the captain relented. "Unrest, my laddie. Several villages have refused their winter tribute, citing Lord Aldrich's recent decisions as reason for their defiance. They object to me," Elara concluded flatly. "The nobility have spread rumors that Lord Aldrich's judgment is compromised, that his choice of a common-born bride shows weakness, unbecoming a ruler." Captain Thorne's discomfort was evident, but his honesty appreciated. "Some whisper that you've enchanted him with village witchery." Elara almost laughed at the absurdity, but the captain's grave expression stopped her. "These are serious accusations in the eyes of simple villagers," she realized. "Indeed, and Lord Blackwell's supporters have been quick to amplify such fears." After the captain departed, Elara paced her chambers restlessly. She had expected resistance from the nobility, but hadn't considered how her presence might destabilize Aldrich's standing among the common people like those from her own village. Later that night, she overheard servants speaking in the corridor outside her room. Their hushed voices carried clearly in the stone hallway. "They say 3 villages have declared for Lord Blackwell already," one whispered. "If the western holdings follow, civil war is certain. Lord Aldrich brought this on himself," another replied. "What lord in his right mind elevates a village herbwoman to countess? The old lord would never have permitted such folly. They say she bewitched him. That's why the king's council is investigating." Elara stepped away from the door, heart pounding. Civil war. King's council investigation. The situation had grown far more serious than Aldrich had revealed. Unable to sleep, she donned a warm cloak and slipped from her chambers, seeking the one place that brought her comfort, the greenhouse where winter preparations for her herb garden continued. The guards nodded respectfully as she passed, but she caught their sideways glances. Inside the glass structure, warmed by braziers, seedlings had already begun sprouting in carefully prepared trays. Elara knelt beside them, finding solace in their simple, honest growth. Plants cared nothing for noble birth or village origins. They responded to care and knowledge, not titles. A shadow crossed the greenhouse entrance. Sophia entered, wrapped in furs against the cold. "I thought I might find you here," she said, settling beside Elara on a wooden bench. "You've heard the rumors, I assume, that I've bewitched your cousin and provoked rebellion." "Yes." Elara traced a seedling's delicate stem with her fingertip. "What I haven't heard is why Aldrich concealed the severity of the situation. To protect you." Sophia sighed. "He believes he can resolve this without sacrificing your future together." "And you disagree?" I think he underestimates Blackwell's influence and overestimates his own position. Sophia's direct gaze held sympathy but also pragmatism. The King's Council rarely intervenes in local marriage matters unless the stability of the realm is threatened. That they've acknowledged Blackwell's petition suggests powerful interests at work. The truth crystallized with sudden clarity. Elara was jeopardizing everything Aldrich had worked for: his reforms, his vision for better governance, perhaps even peace within his lands. One woman's happiness weighed against the welfare of thousands. That night, Elara packed a small travel bag. Not her original bundle, but items collected during her stay: a warm cloak, sturdy boots, practical garments rather than court finery. She added dried food from the kitchen stores and a pouch containing a few silver coins she had been given for personal expenses. With steady hand she wrote a letter to Aldrich. "My lord, I release you from your offer of marriage. Your vision for your lands is too important to sacrifice for one person's happiness. I return to my village knowing that the compassion that drew us together is the same compassion that now compels me to leave. Your people deserve a lord focused on their needs, not defending a controversial bride. Be the ruler your people deserve. That is all I have ever wished for you. With deepest regard, Elara." She placed the letter on her pillow, where it would be discovered in the morning. Then, with the wooden horse tucked safely in her pocket, she slipped from her chambers toward the servants' staircase. What she didn't expect was to find Captain Thorne waiting at the bottom of those stairs, his expression suggesting he had anticipated her decision all along.
"Going somewhere, my lady?" Captain Thorne stood with arms crossed, his expression neither accusing nor surprised. Elara clutched her travel bag tighter. "I thought it best to leave quietly, without saying farewell to Lord Aldrich. He would consider that discourteous. I left a letter. Words on parchment are poor substitutes for spoken truth." The captain gestured toward a side corridor. "Lord Aldrich is in his study. He's been expecting something like this." Seeing no graceful escape, Elara followed the captain through torchlit passages to a part of the keep she had visited only once before. Two guards flanked an ornate door, but stepped aside at the captain's nod. He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting for response. Aldrich sat behind a massive desk, surrounded by maps and documents. He looked up, unsurprised by their arrival, as if he had indeed been waiting. "Thank you, Captain. Please leave us." When the door closed, Aldrich studied Elara's travel attire and bag with a sad smile. "So, you've decided to run away." "To free you," Elara corrected, setting her bag down. "Your position is compromised because of me." "My position was compromised long before you arrived." Aldrich rose, moving to a shelf lined with leather-bound volumes. He selected one particularly ancient tome and returned to the desk. "I've not been entirely honest with you about why I chose you, Elara, or rather, I've shared only part of the truth." He opened the book, revealing yellowed pages covered in faded script. "This is the Thornwall family chronicle, recording our lineage and significant events since the keep's founding. Look at this passage, written by my great-grandfather." Elara leaned closer to read where his finger pointed. "In the year of the great frost, a seer came to Thornwall bearing prophecy. When darkness threatens the land and false friends surround the Lord, salvation shall come through mercy freely given. The one who sacrifices their last possession to aid a stranger in chains shall unite the realm and bring prosperity unknown for generations. Heed these words, sons of Thornwall, when rebellion stirs and loyalty falters." Elara looked up, confusion evident. "You believe this refers to me?" "I know it does." Aldrich closed the book carefully. "When my father died and opposition immediately formed around Blackwell, I remembered this prophecy. It had been dismissed as superstition by my father, but I wondered, what if there was truth in it? So your imprisonment in the villages was a test, yes, but not merely of character as I told you. I was seeking the person described in this prophecy." His expression softened. "In 9 villages, only you fulfilled the conditions exactly, giving your last possession to free a stranger in chains with no expectation of return." Elara sank into a chair, mind reeling. You married me because of a prophecy. I offered marriage because the prophecy confirmed what I already sensed, that you possessed exactly the qualities needed to help heal these lands. Aldrich knelt before her, taking her hands. My father ruled through fear and force. I seek to rule through justice and compassion. Who better to help me than someone who embodies those virtues? But the rebellion, Blackwell's petition, were inevitable regardless of whom I married. Aldrich squeezed her hands gently. Blackwell opposed my father's policies and now opposes mine, though for different reasons. My father was too harsh. He thinks me too lenient. The prophecy suggests these challenges were foreordained. The darkness that threatens before dawn breaks. You truly believe this ancient prediction? I believe in its wisdom, whether divine prophecy or merely my ancestors' insight. Aldrich released her hands and moved to the window. The unrest reported today wasn't spontaneous. Blackwell's men have been stirring discontent for months, spreading lies, promising tax relief to villages that declare for him. Why didn't you tell me the full truth from the beginning? Would you have believed me? A nobleman, claiming ancient prophecy, marked you as his destined bride. He smiled wryly. I thought it better to build trust first, to let you come to know me as a man rather than a desperate lord clutching at mystical predictions. Elara considered this, finding his reasoning sound. She would indeed have been skeptical of prophecy claims upon first meeting. Yet one question remained. If you married me based on prophecy, then your feelings grew naturally, he interrupted, returning to kneel before her. The prophecy led me to you, Elara, but my heart followed its own course thereafter. I've come to admire your courage, your wisdom, your steadfast compassion. Those feelings are entirely separate from ancient words on parchment. Elara searched his face, finding sincerity in his expression. The revelation of the prophecy explained much. His unusual method of finding a bride, his confidence in the face of noble opposition, his patience with her adjustment to court life. The prophecy speaks of uniting the realm, she noted. I'm not sure how a village healer accomplishes that. Neither am I, Aldrich admitted. But I suspect it begins by not running away in the night. He gestured to her travel bag. Will you stay, Elara? Not because of prophecy or obligation, but because together we might create something better than either of us could achieve alone. The wooden horse pressed against her side where it remained in her pocket, a talisman from her old life carried into the new. Perhaps that was the answer, not abandoning one existence for another, but bringing the best of her origins forward to meet the future. I'll stay, she decided, but no more secrets between us. If we're to face Blackwell and his conspirators, we do so in full honesty with each other. Agreed, Aldrich said, relief evident in his voice. Starting tomorrow, we plan our response together. Dawn brought new purpose. Elara joined Aldrich in his study, where a large battle map lay spread across the table. Colored markers indicated allied houses, opposition territories, and contested regions. The visual representation of their challenge was sobering. Nearly half the map showed areas loyal to Lord Blackwell or wavering in their allegiance. We're outnumbered in terms of noble houses, Aldrich explained, but not necessarily in popular support. Blackwell's allies are largely the old guard, those who benefited most from my father's harsh policies. And the common people? Elara asked, studying the map. Divided. Many welcome my reforms, reduced taxes, fairer justice. Others fear change or have been swayed by Blackwell's propaganda. Aldrich pointed to several markers along the western border. These three houses are key. Their lands buffer ours from Westmark. If they declare for Blackwell, we face enemies on two fronts. What do they value most? What would secure their loyalty? Traditional concerns, security, prosperity, advantageous marriages for their children. Aldrich sighed. Lord Valmont, the most influential among them, has a daughter of marriageable age. Blackwell has already suggested his nephew as a match. Sophia joined them, bringing reports from her network of informants. Valmont's daughter has taken ill, she announced. Some wasting sickness the local healers can't identify. Blackwell's physician was sent for, but apparently made no progress. Elara glanced up sharply. How serious is her condition? Near death, according to my sources. Valmont is desperate. He's already lost 2 children to similar ailments. A possibility formed in Elara's mind. What if I could help her? Aldrich looked skeptical. Blackwell's own physician failed. What could you offer that he couldn't? Village wisdom sometimes succeeds where formal training fails, Elara replied. At minimum, it gives us reason to request an audience with Lord Valmont, neutral ground to counter Blackwell's influence. By midday, they were riding west with a small retinue. The journey to Valmont Keep took 2 days through snow-covered countryside. Villages they passed showed signs of the unrest, closed shutters, wary glances, occasional graffiti denouncing the Witch Bride of Thornwall. Valmont Keep was smaller than Thornwall, but formidably positioned atop a rocky crag. Its gates opened reluctantly at their approach, and the welcome inside was cooler still. Lord Valmont, a bear-like man with greying beard and haggard eyes, received them in his great hall. Lord Aldrich, he acknowledged stiffly. Your visit is unexpected. We come with purpose, Lord Valmont. I've heard of your daughter's illness and brought someone who might help where others have failed. Valmont's gaze shifted to Elara, suspicion evident. The village healer who would be Countess? Forgive my skepticism, but my Lydia has been seen by Westmark's finest physicians. Yet she still suffers, Elara replied calmly. What harm in allowing one more attempt? After visible internal debate, Valmont nodded curtly. Follow me! But understand, if your remedies worsen her condition, our houses will have more than political disagreements between them. The sick room was dim and stifling, heavy with the scent of illness and ineffective remedies. On the bed lay a girl of perhaps 16, her face flushed with fever, breathing laboured. A nursemaid dabbed her forehead with cool cloths, looking up hopefully as they entered. Elara approached, setting her medicine bag beside the bed. With gentle hands, she examined the girl, feeling her pulse, checking her eyes and tongue, noting the distinctive rash across her collarbones. How long has she been ill? Elara asked, already reaching for certain herbs in her bag. 2 weeks, the nursemaid replied. It began with fever and headaches, then the rash appeared 3 days ago. Elara nodded, recognizing the pattern. She has forest fever, rare in winter but not unknown. The rash is distinctive. Impossible, declared a thin man who had entered behind them. Forest fever appears in summer months only. I am Dr. Meldon, and I've ruled out such common ailments. In most cases, yes, Elara agreed, unintimidated. But when carried by certain rodents seeking warmth in human dwellings during winter, it can spread regardless of season. My village saw 3 such cases 2 winters past. She turned to Lord Valmont. I need clean water, fresh linens, and privacy. I can prepare a tincture that should reduce her fever within hours if my diagnosis is correct. And if you're wrong, Valmont challenged. My remedy contains nothing harmful. Primarily elderflower, willow bark, and echinacea with supporting herbs. If I'm wrong, she simply continues as before. If right, she improves rapidly. Desperation overruled caution. Valmont ordered the items Elara requested and withdrew with the others, leaving only the nursemaid to assist. Through the night, Elara administered her remedy in carefully timed doses. By dawn, Lydia's fever had broken. By midday, she was conscious and able to take broth. By evening, the rash had begun to fade. Lord Valmont's gratitude manifested as a feast in their honour. During the meal, Elara found herself seated beside him at the high table, a position of honour that would have been unthinkable days earlier. "You've given me back my daughter," he said quietly, during a lull in the dinner conversation. Blackwell's physician claimed nothing could be done. Perhaps he lacked certain knowledge, Elara replied diplomatically. Or perhaps he lacked incentive to heal her. Valmont's shrewd eyes suggested deeper understanding. Blackwell's offer of his nephew's hand would be strengthened by my desperation, would it not? The political implications hung in the air between them. A grieving father might grasp at any alliance offering stability. A grateful father had more options. Later, in the privacy of their guest chambers, Aldrich unrolled the battle map again. He moved Lord Valmont's marker from the wavering column to allied. One house turned, he noted. Two more to convince. And how shall we approach them? Elara asked, watching as he updated the strategic positions. Aldrich smiled, reaching for her hand. Together, as I believe we were meant to. For the first time since arriving at Thornwall Keep, Elara felt truly essential, not as a symbol or a prophecy's fulfillment, but as a partner bringing unique strengths to their shared challenges. Her village wisdom, once dismissed as primitive by the court, had achieved what noble connections and political maneuvering could not. The wooden horse remained in her pocket, a reminder of simpler days. But as she studied the battle map beside Aldrich, she realized she no longer wished to return to that simplicity. Here, despite the dangers, she had found purpose greater than survival alone. 3 weeks of intensive diplomacy transformed the battle map. Lord Valmont's shift in allegiance had created a ripple effect, bringing 2 other houses to Aldrich's side. Elara had played a crucial role, accompanying Aldrich to each estate. Her straightforward manner and practical knowledge, whether healing ailments or suggesting improvements to winter food. Storage had impressed nobles who expected either timidity or pretension from Aldrich's bride-to-be. The King's Council, presented with evidence of Blackwell's machinations, had dismissed his petition against the marriage. With this official recognition, Aldrich decided the time had come for a decisive move. "We'll host a feast," he announced in council. "Invite every noble house, including those currently aligned with Blackwell. Frame it as a celebration of our upcoming wedding and a gesture of unity. Blackwell will suspect a trap," Captain Thorne warned. "Let him. He can hardly refuse a public invitation without appearing fearful." Aldrich turned to Elara. "What do you think?" "A gathering makes sense," she agreed. "But we should ensure the seating arrangements maximize our advantages." That afternoon, Elara worked with Mistress Livia on a detailed Great Hall seating chart. Each placement was strategic, allies positioned near wavering houses to influence them. Blackwell's supporters separated from each other to minimize their coordination, and Blackwell himself placed at the high table where he could be closely monitored. "Place Lady Beatrice beside me," Elara instructed. "Surprising the household mistress. Are you certain, my lady? After the incident with the goblet?" "Precisely because of it. Keep friends close and enemies closer, as the saying goes." Preparations for the feast consumed the keep for the next week. As responses arrived, the Great Hall layout was adjusted. Lord Blackwell initially declined, then reconsidered when informed that representatives from the King's Court would attend. Lady Beatrice accepted with suspicious promptness. On the appointed evening, Elara dressed with special care. Her gown, newly made for the occasion, combined noble styling with practical elements, deep blue velvet embroidered with silver healing plants rather than the traditional family crests or hunting scenes. "You look every inch a countess," Sophia commented, adjusting Elara's silver circlet. "Yet unmistakably yourself." "Let's hope that combination proves effective," Elara replied. "Tonight will determine whether we face continued political maneuvering or open conflict." The Great Hall blazed with hundreds of candles. Noble guests in their finest attire created a sea of color and gleaming jewelry as Elara entered on Aldrich's arm. They made their way to the high table, where, as planned, Lord Blackwell and Lady Beatrice awaited among other honored guests. "Lord Aldrich, Lady Elara," Blackwell bowed with exaggerated formality. "A most interesting gathering. We thought it time to put aside divisions," Aldrich replied smoothly. "After all, we serve the same kingdom, do we not?" Conversation during the early courses remained carefully polite. Elara engaged with guests on either side, aware of Beatrice's calculating gaze from 2 seats away. The noble woman had dressed to outshine the hostess, her crimson gown adorned with gold thread and rubies, her elaborately arranged hair seeming to require a servant's constant attention. As the main course was served, Lord Blackwell rose, claiming the hall's attention with raised goblet. Though unplanned in the evening schedule, custom dictated that a lord's toast could not be refused. To Lord Aldrich and his unconventional bride-to-be, he announced, voice carrying through the suddenly quiet hall. May their union prove as successful as it is unprecedented. The double-edged compliment drew uncomfortable shifting among the guests. Elara maintained a composed smile as Blackwell continued. Indeed, we live in changing times. Once noble bloodlines determined succession and alliance. Now it seems any village healer might aspire to countess. His smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. One wonders what other traditions might be discarded in this new order. Perhaps next we'll see peasants administering justice or shepherds commanding armies. The insult hung in the air. Several of Blackwell's allies nodded in approval, while Aldrich's supporters frowned at the breach of hospitality. Elara felt Aldrich tense beside her, ready to respond, but she placed a gentle hand on his arm and rose instead. Thank you for your good wishes, Lord Blackwell. Her clear voice carried without strain. You speak of traditions as if they were immutable laws of nature, rather than practices created by people to serve their needs. She lifted her own goblet. I am indeed a village healer. I've delivered babies in humble cottages, treated fevers in winter, and eased the passing of the elderly when their time came. I've never pretended to be what I am not. Elara's gaze swept the hall. But I wonder, my lords and ladies, which serves a realm better, noble birth without compassion, or common birth with genuine concern for others' welfare? Lord Aldrich chose me not despite my origins, but because of the values those origins instilled. Her eyes returned to Blackwell. As for peasants administering justice or shepherds commanding armies, history teaches that wisdom and leadership emerge from all stations. The first king of this realm was a farmer's son who rose through merit, not bloodline. Would you question his legitimacy as well? A murmur of approval rippled through the hall. The historical reference, gleaned from Elara's intensive study of realm history, was irrefutable and pointedly relevant. Blackwell's face darkened. Pretty words from a practiced healer. One might almost believe you belong here, until one recalls your hand was purchased with a single silver coin. Lady Beatrice seized the opening. Indeed, a bride acquired for the price of a good meal. How economical. The calculated cruelty aimed to provoke emotional response, to make Elara appear either weak through tears or common through anger. Instead, she smiled with genuine amusement. You're absolutely correct, Lady Beatrice. Lord Aldrich gained a bride for a single silver coin, proof of his superior judgment, wouldn't you say? Some nobles spend fortunes on advantageous marriages, only to find themselves bound to partners whose true value emerges too late. Laughter erupted across the hall, even from some of Blackwell's supporters. The atmosphere shifted as nobles recognized and appreciated the skillful parry. Blackwell, sensing the room turning against him, resumed his seat with poorly concealed fury. Aldrich rose, reclaiming control of his feast. Let us remember that we gather tonight in celebration, not conflict. The strength of our realm lies not in rigid adherence to past practices, but in recognizing value wherever it appears. As the meal continued, Elara noted a subtle redistribution occurring throughout the hall. Several nobles previously aligned with Blackwell now engaged enthusiastically with Aldrich's supporters. The confrontation had forced fence-sitters to choose sides, and many were gravitating toward the vision of leadership that balanced tradition with adaptability. By evening's end, the seating chart had served its purpose. Strategic conversations had occurred exactly as planned, and Blackwell's faction appeared visibly diminished as they departed. A decisive victory, Captain Thorne observed as the last guests left. Blackwell overplayed his hand and revealed his weakness, Elara added. He has nothing to offer but fear of change. Spring arrived with gentle persistence, melting winter's grip on the land. In the greenhouse, Elara's herb garden flourished, seedlings now robust enough for transplanting to the outdoor beds. The wedding, scheduled for the equinox, approached with similar inevitability. Following the confrontation at the feast, Lord Blackwell had retreated to his own lands. His influence diminished but not eliminated. Occasional reports suggested he still plotted, but without the broad support previously enjoyed. Lady Beatrice had abruptly announced a lengthy visit to distant relatives, removing herself from immediate court politics. For Elara, the weeks had brought a surprising transformation. What had begun as an arrangement based on prophecy and practicality had evolved into something deeper. She and Aldrich now worked as true partners, their complementary strengths creating a balance neither could achieve alone. His political acumen paired with her practical insight, his strategic thinking enhanced by her intuitive understanding of people's needs. The night before their wedding, Elara stood in her chambers while seamstresses made final adjustments to her bridal gown. Unlike the opulent creations traditionally worn by noble brides, she had requested a design that honored both her new position and her origins. "It's unlike any wedding garment I've created," admitted the head seamstress, adjusting the final drape of fabric. "But I must confess, it suits you perfectly." The gown combined fine silk in thornwool blue with panels of hand-woven cloth from Elara's village, embroidered with healing herbs and woodland flowers. The sleeves, fitted at the shoulders, widened at the wrists in the current court fashion, but were trimmed with simple lace, reminiscent of village festive attire. When the seamstresses departed, Sophia entered, carrying something wrapped in soft cloth. "A gift from Aldrich," she explained, setting it on the table. "He wanted you to have it tonight." Unwrapped, the gift revealed itself as a wedding garland unlike any Elara had seen. Traditional noble brides wore circlets of precious metals adorned with jewels. Village brides wore wreaths of flowers and greenery. This creation merged both traditions, a delicate silver framework interwoven with fresh herbs and spring blossoms. "He designed it himself," Sophia said, watching Elara's reaction. "Had the silversmith create the framework while the gardeners gathered the plants from your medicinal garden. The blue flowers are from your village. He sent riders yesterday to collect them." Emotion tightened Elara's throat as she lifted the garland, the care evident in its creation, the thoughtful blending of both worlds. This wasn't the gesture of a man fulfilling prophecy or political strategy, but of someone who truly saw her. "There's a note," Sophia added, indicating a small parchment beneath the wrapping. Elara unfolded it to find Aldrich's precise handwriting. "For the woman who gave her last coin to free a stranger, I offer my heart, freely given. Not because ancient words dictated it, but because I have found in you a partner worthy of true union. Tomorrow we weed before the realm, but tonight I wanted you to know that my commitment would exist regardless of crown or kingdom." A knock at the door announced an unexpected visitor, Master Hadrian. The court physician, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Forgive the intrusion, my lady," he bowed slightly. "Lord Aldrich suggested I might speak with you before tomorrow's ceremony." When Sophia had tactfully withdrawn, the elderly physician produced a small wooden box. "I served the previous countess, Lord Aldrich's mother, for many years. Before her death, she entrusted me with this, asking that it be given to her son's bride when the time came." Inside the box lay a simple silver ring set with a single blue stone. "She wore this daily, though her official jewelry was far more elaborate," the physician explained. "It was a gift from her own village before she married into nobility. She was common-born." Elara asked, surprised. "Indeed. The old lord married her against considerable opposition, much like your own situation. She adapted to court life but never forgot her origins." Master Hadrian smiled at Elara's evident shock. "History has interesting patterns, my lady. Lord Aldrich likely never told you, because he himself only learned of it recently, from the family chronicles you discovered." The revelation settled over Elara like a final puzzle piece clicking into place. The prophecy, Aldrich's unconventional search for a bride, his confidence in her ability to adapt, all connected to a pattern established a generation earlier. That night, alone in her chambers for the last time, Elara wrote in the journal she had maintained since arriving at Thornwall. What had begun as a simple record of events had evolved into a thoughtful chronicle of her journey. Tomorrow I become Countess of Thornwall in name, though in practice the role has grown around me these past months, like a garment gradually altered to fit. I came here a stranger, elevated by circumstance and ancient words. I remain in truth, bound by something far stronger than prophecy, partnership based on mutual respect and growing affection. The journey from village healer to nobleman's wife might seem vast, but I have discovered that the distance exists more in perception than reality. The skills that served my village, listening, observing, healing, adapting, serve equally well in court politics. The compassion that led me to free a shackled stranger guides me still in larger decisions, affecting many lives. The wooden horse sits on my windowsill, no longer a talisman of homesickness, but a reminder that we carry our origins with us always, not as limitations, but as foundations upon which to build. She paused, fingering the wedding garland with its blend of precious metal and living plants. Tomorrow would bring ceremony and public affirmation, but the true union had already formed through shared purpose and mutual choice. What began as mercy given freely had indeed returned threefold, just as Mistress Wren had promised. 1 year later, autumn leaves drifted across the courtyard of Thornwall Keep as Elara signed the final document. The royal decree, bearing both her signature and Aldrich's, established a revolutionary approach to governance. Its provisions included annual funds to free unjustly imprisoned citizens, regular court sessions where commoners could bring grievances directly to their lord, and the founding of healing houses in each major village, staffed by trained local practitioners. "Are you certain the council will accept these provisions?" asked Master Hadrian, who had become one of Elara's strongest allies. "They already have," she replied, pressing the Countess's seal into warm wax beside the existing lordly impression. "The last holdout Lord Eastwood agreed after his daughter's recovery at our central healing house. The past year had transformed both Elara and the realm she now helped govern. The prophesied prosperity had indeed come, though not through magical means. Instead, practical changes implemented by a ruler who understood common people's needs had gradually improved conditions throughout the region. Lord Blackwell had eventually pledged reluctant loyalty. After his poorly planned military action against Thornwall failed due to lack of popular support, Lady Beatrice had married a wealthy merchant from the coastal cities, removing herself permanently from local politics. "The messenger leaves for the capital at midday," Elara noted, handing the sealed decree to a waiting page. "This should reach the King's Council before the first snow." After completing the morning's administrative tasks, Elara changed into simpler clothing. Today marked a personal milestone as important as any political achievement. Accompanied by a small retinue, she rode from Thornwall Keep toward her former village. The journey that had once seemed so vast now felt brief, the landscape familiar, yet changed by the perspective of time and experience. As they approached the village, Elara noted improvements implemented under her and Aldrich's governance. A new stone bridge spanning the stream, reinforced roofs on the cottages, a proper schoolhouse where none had existed before. Villagers emerged from homes and fields as the party arrived. Their greetings held a curious mixture of respect for her position and lingering familiarity from her former life among them. Children presented flowers, and elders offered formal welcomes that would have been unimaginable when she lived in the forest cottage. Widow Thorne awaited at the village square, looking little changed despite the passing year. "So the prophecy spoke true," the old woman observed, embracing Elara without regard for protocol. "Our village healer brought prosperity to the realm." "Not alone," Elara corrected. "Changes come through many hands working together, but often need one hand to guide the first action," the widow countered. "Just as one coin freed a shackled lord." The celebration that followed blended formal ceremony with village traditions. Elara and Uldric presided from seats of honor as villagers presented gifts, performed traditional dances, and shared a communal feast that combined humble local fare with contributions from the keep's kitchens. During a quiet moment, Elara slipped away to visit her former cottage. The small structure had been maintained rather than abandoned, now serving as a way station for traveling healers who carried medical knowledge between villages. Inside, she found much unchanged, the same hearth where she had cooked simple meals, the same rafters from which herb bundles had hung. Yet the space felt smaller, simpler than in memory, not diminished, but properly placed in the broader context of her expanded life. As twilight approached, a significant ceremony began in the village square. Uldric, dressed not in lordly finery, but in the simple disguise he had worn when first imprisoned here, stood before the gathered community. 1 year ago, an act of mercy in this square changed the course of our realm, he announced. Today we establish a new tradition to honor that legacy. Each year henceforth, the lords and ladies of this realm will spend 3 days living among the people they govern, not as rulers, but as common citizens. From a wooden chest, attendants distributed simple clothing to the assembled nobles who had accompanied them. Each lord and lady would disperse to a different village, working alongside common people and experiencing their daily challenges firsthand. True understanding cannot come from distance, Uldric continued. To govern wisely, we must know the lives of those we serve, their hardships and joys, their needs and strengths. Elara watched as the nobles, some enthusiastic and others clearly apprehensive, accepted their assignments. The tradition would face resistance, certainly. Some would participate reluctantly, going through motions without embracing the spirit of the exercise. But over time, she believed, the practice would transform the relationship between rulers and ruled, just as her own journey had transformed her understanding of both worlds. As night fell, lanterns illuminated the village square, where once a punishment post had stood. In its place now rose a simple stone monument, inscribed with words from the ancient prophecy, "Salvation shall come through mercy freely given." Standing beside the monument, Elara reflected on the extraordinary journey from that dawn when she had surrendered her last coin. The wooden horse, now kept in a place of honor in their private chambers, remained a reminder of how small actions could cascade into profound change. Was it worth it? Uldric asked quietly, joining her beside the monument. Trading your simple life for the complexities of court politics and weighty responsibility. It wasn't a trade, Elara replied, watching villagers and nobles mingling around the celebration fires. It was an expansion. I haven't lost my old self. I've merely added new dimensions to who I am. She took his hand, feeling the warm strength that had become familiar and cherished over their months together. The true gift wasn't becoming a countess, but finding purpose larger than myself, yet still connected to who I've always been. Around them, the celebration continued, a living testament to what could grow from a single act of compassion. One coin given freely had indeed returned not merely threefold, but thousandfold in the transformed lives of an entire realm.